Hey guys, so it's here bringing you another video, and welcome to another dev update video. And this one is actually kind of a semi-big one because this is about all the recent changes that the mid-season update did. A lot of obviously people were questioning what they were doing and kind of why, doing a massive AD carry overhaul of items when AD carries have been completely fine for a while was a bit weird to a lot of people, including myself. But this is Riot explaining a bit more, and then also kind of saying, was it a success or was it not? And then also, what are they looking more to do potentially? So this is from obviously Riot Freak, that used to be a dev, Riot Truxy, Riot Bok Erp, and Riot Skaz. Why can't they just be like a Riot Bob? Why? Easy to pronounce names would be good. Anyway, welcome back to Quick Gameplay Thoughts. We took a short break to work on the mid-season update, but now that it's shipped, we have some not so quick thoughts about gameplay we'd like to share. But before jumping into that, we acknowledge that and say that we agree with feedback that top lane and mage mid experiences aren't great at the moment. Duh, they haven't been great for ages. However, we don't believe champion buffs and items alone are sufficient. No, they're not, as we think a lot of problems are tied to the innate map design and not solvable for mid-season. Mages and top laners being too gankable requires redesigning some parts of the map, among other possible tactics. That's not the problem. See, this is what sometimes concerns me, and I just have to say it like openly. Riot acknowledges sometimes a problem exists, but then they get it wrong why that problem exists. Mages, especially in mid, it's not the fact that we're gankable. Yes, immobile mages are gankable. They always have been. But guess what? Immobile mages haven't always been terrible. Why are immobile mages having a harder time? Because the game, and here's going to be the point that I don't think they're going to be able to fix, the game's too flexible nowadays for most mages. What do I mean by that? Basically, a mage is very weak in the early game, kind of like an AD carry, but an AD carry has got a support to baby them in lane phase to get them through that tough phase until they can scale and carry. The same goes for a mage, that they're really weak, but they don't have that support to push their, strength level up in the early game. Notice that you even see mages in bot lane doing fairly well because they get that support. Karthus is doing pretty good in bot lane because he has that help that mages kind of, you could say, need. The problem in mid is when you've got a mage who is really weak in the early game against so much of the modern mid laner metas and all this stuff of, Akshan or Yone or Kiana or Katarina. Those champions have so much more flexibility than a mage, because if they stay in lane, they will just beat the mage, just straight up, because the mage is really weak. But then at the same time, they can just go roam and make big impact on the map when a mage can't. And if they roam, they go get a double kill bot lane, well then they're ahead of the mage. And a lot of mages cannot even wave clear enough to keep an enemy mid. And some enemy mids don't even care if they're going to lose farm. That's the bigger problem. It's the flexibility that, let's say, meta mid laners that aren't mages have. And again, that doesn't really affect pro play because pro play is a more structured game. It's more of a solo queue issue. I know obviously I'll say the point, but Katarina or Kiana, they don't care about farm per minute. They care about snowballing the game. So they won't go mid. They don't have to go mid. And even if they stay mid, most of them will beat a mage anyway. So that is the problem. And then, yeah, if you then want to say on top of that, mages are weak, etc., etc., and they get ganked by a jungler, sure, that's a problem. But the innate problem, or initial problem, is not about being too gankable. It's their opponents having too much freedom, if that makes sense. Let me know what you think. Obviously, that's actually technically what this isn't about that. But yeah, as a mage player, I want them to get it right, not wrong. If they redesign the map, but then still let enemy mid laners do whatever they want, it's not going to matter at all. And Riot have done that in the past. They really have. So in 3.10, we buffed some mage and fighter itemization, nerfed some mage item counters, and shipped a small teleport buff to address some of the weaknesses. We know there's still a lot to work on that can be done in this area, but we continue to think about this space in the long term and short term. Dude, Rito Games, invite me and I'll have a chat with you. Like that, that would be cool, but I just hope they don't get it wrong. That's the problem that I'm hoping, because it's not about ganks. Yes, ganks hurt. Yes, it's easy to gank mid, but that's not actually the problem. It's the fact that you could be playing pretty good on an Anivia, on Aurelion, or whatever mage. You know, hell, Aurelion and Anivia are doing quite well compared to a lot of mages. It's the fact that your mid laner could ignore mid lane and get way more fed than you, make way more game impact than you, and then the game's over before you can make an impact on a mage. That's the problem. Anyway, for the mid-season this year, we wanted to make improvements to several item systems and game mechanics, minion rules, plants, etc., as well as test a pilot of an alternate take on mythic items and test some assumptions for preseason work. So here we go. So the crit item changes. So it's worked on by Freak and Truexy. The crit item changes started with an explanation of what the system would look like if Infinity Edge, Quick Blades, Ginsu, Rageblade were official mythic items. Is a departure from the old direction of mythic items, create as much parity as possible, and mythics should be bought first, and onto a new direction that focuses on mythics being your most impactful item, even if that means your favorite champion is hard bound to just one of them. From there, it was figuring out if new mythics should enter the fold and what form a mythic should look like. We spent some time prototyping Static Shiv as a mythic whose bounces scaled with Mystic passive and carried all other energize effects on its chain lightning, but we decided against making a mythic with a rigid synergies. In the end, we decided to retain Gale Force as mythic since that was the only thing to keep Gale Force active effect. I will say I have heard some people be a little bit salty that Gale Force kept to survive and Prowlers didn't. And I've even seen, like, I'm not even kidding, I've seen AD Scions can't let go of having a dash for zombie form, so they're even buying Gale Force. Yeah, it's the problem when you're giving items too many powerful mechanics and people become reliant on those item mechanics. It's why I've always said don't give items champion level mechanics. It's a bit of a dangerous area, but Riot have been, in recent years, they've been way more into making items the show of League rather than champions. At least that's the way it's felt. And yeah, that hasn't really changed. So demoting the former mythic items to legendary was just a matter of trimming down their stat profiles since they no longer obviously are that, and pulling their gold efficiency down to the level of legendary items. We decided to keep Noonquiver as an early stepping stone epic item and used it to ensure likely first item purchases for crit champions had smooth build paths. The goal with other legendary item shifts was bringing their prices closer to facilitate direct comparisons while also shipping small buffs to underused items and nerf the overused ones. The same logic went into epic items to ensure, etc. So on the data has shown balance outliers, so we're adjusting them in the upcoming patch of 13.11. We will continue to tune the system to ensure each item is best in slot somewhere, and will continue, etc, etc. The only thing that I would say is I'm not that offended by the crit actual things, because, you know, it didn't need to happen. AD carries have been great this whole season, so some of us are still confused why they even did it. Like, when AD carries are fine, they're healthy, they're very powerful, why didn't Riot prioritize the mages or even top lane? Because they have been, it's been a long time since that has been a problem, where AD carries have been fine. I think that is one of them, but the bigger thing that I will say I've got partial issue with is the Rageblade. When it comes to these items, Rageblade, it's the problem with hybrid builds. Riot, a few years ago, obviously, they got rid of pretty much the hybrid builds because hybrid builds have always been problematic in League of Legends. You know, it's been problematic with champions like Yi, Jax, Kayle. You know, when hybrid builds are good, even Katarina, obviously, when hybrid builds are good, they're really hard to balance because when you're against that champion and if they manage to snowball a bit, you can't build against them because they're building armor, they're dealing, armor and magic damage, AD and AP damage at the same time. And they're snowballing, where if a champion is snowballing and okay, they do AD damage, you build armor. If they're AP, you build MR. It's really hard to build both of those things at the same time, thus making it really hard to balance for the health of League. So when I saw that they were bringing basically back hybrid, it has made me scratch my head thinking that is just a really weird idea because it wasn't great in the past. And, you know, we've all been playing in the patch for the last couple of weeks. It has been really frustrating to play against some of the champions with it. And I would say, hilariously, I have not seen much Jax or Kayle. I've seen a lot of Master Yi, though, and that's frustrating. So, I don't know. I'm sure they'll tweak it. Maybe nerfs will be coming. But hilariously, the actual Rageblade build on most champions seems okay. There are some outliers like Varus and Kog'Maw. They seem very good. And then Master Yi seems very good. But maybe they just need individual nerfs. I don't know. But yeah. Assassin changes. Again, I don't know which person... And again, it's sometimes it does boggle your mind because when you see the numbers of items and the patch, it's like, that's going to be a bad idea. Whoever thought it was a genius idea to make Yumu's as strong as they did, like giving over like 30 lethality with stacks, is just bizarre to me. It's like they don't play the game. But yeah, that's been really weird. I know it's getting hard nerfed, but like, why was it released like that in the first place? Like, every single game is just lethality assassin junglers every game. And oh, it's an assassin or lethality champion mid, a lethality champion bot. There's even AD carries buying it. It's just so dumb. I don't know why it didn't get hotfix nerfed. Other things got hotfix buffed. Why didn't that get a nerf? I don't know. It's odd. But assassins have been in a rough spot since the durability patch. No, they haven't. Hilariously, they really haven't. You know, I play some assassins myself. The rough spot of assassins they've actually had to build as assassins to do their job. That's not in a rough spot. It's just before that, they were so overpowered before they could build tank and still one-shot you. Now they actually have to play assassin. That's not being in a rough spot. That's being an assassin. An assassin, to me, in any really type of video game, but especially PvP, should be a niche playstyle, not a mainstream playstyle. It should be a niche playstyle that you specialize in being an assassin player. But now, assassin is mainstream. That's, I think, in part of the problem. But anyway, been a rough spot, according to weird data, probably. We knew the class was weak, false, but ran into some problems that have slowed us down since Season 10. The Mythics, yeah, because they've not been that bad. The Assassin Mythics came with some of the most exciting and unique effects, but were also some of the most dangerous to game health, yeah, because they were strong. That meant that we kept assassin items at a lower win rate than a lot of classes. Whenever the class was up for buffs, we were left with buffing the items that we knew would be risky to the game when powerful Duskblade, Prowlers, etc. Or buff the champions knowing that if we adjusted their items, that we'd quickly need to undo the nerfs. That's the thing, it's such a volatile class, and it wasn't really weak, let's be honest. Yeah, the items were strong, there's no doubt, but still, the champions haven't been that weak either. Some, I'd say, exceptions have been on the weaker side, but I'd say the majority have been completely fine. We had decided to adjust the Assassin Mythics to have less power in their frustrating effects, dashes, repeated stealths, so that we could shift more power into Assassin players, you know, what they need. This gave us the room to expand upon each Assassin's needs and let them pick which items fits their perfect lethal fantasy. So for actual assassins, I think this is healthy and it's been fine. Obviously, the kind of casualty to this is kind of the champions that were buying these items that weren't really supposed to be. Obviously, AD Scion is one of the biggest things, even Renekton, but I think Renekton is getting individual buffs soon. Those champions that were kind of bruisery AD, but then would be buying assassin items, they were a problem because they were giving assassin mechanics to non-assassins, but it worked really well, arguably too well, and it just wasn't fun to play against, I think, is what the biggest complaint has been. You might beat an AD Scion, you might beat a Renekton Prowlersing on you and whatever, you might beat them, their win rate may not be good, but it's game satisfaction. It's not fun to just get 3-punched by an AD Scion after you've, you know, killed him. You've outplayed him, you've killed him, he's dead. Oh, I can't get away because he's got Prowler's Claw in zombie form. It's just not fun. And I think that's what Riot were kind of aiming for. We need to kind of bring back, well, that's just not fun, which is good. So in Season 10, we originally wanted Ghostblade as an assassin mythic, but held it back because we thought the effect was a bit too generic and didn't fit the goal of game-to-game decisions that we originally wanted for the system. We've loosened that restriction and want to return to an item that assassin players have been building for, you know, for ages. We have added some nuance as the item has been reshaped to be all about shifting around the map for one upfront burst moment. Dustblade has been changed, etc. So again, I don't need Dustblade. Obviously, wasn't the most healthy stealth, etc. And then Eclipse is the same because it was actually quite good. Yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with the assassin changes. Apart from they made Ghostblade ridiculously OP, and that's just a number issue. Like the fact that it gives, I think, 18 base lethality and then up to 12 from stacks, literally 30 lethality from one item, which will be your first item. That was just weird. Like there's no other way to define that. Whoever made that decision of it being that strong is just a very bizarre decision to make. That was always going to be stupid. Apart from that, and obviously, yes, it's getting nerfed. Yes, they should have hotfixed nerfed it, though. It's not that bad. Like, every jungle of this patch has been a lethality junglers practically. Even champions that you wouldn't quite think would be building it, you know, Yumu's are. That is just simply because how OP the item has been. Hopefully, with it being nerfed, we'll see a bit more diversity in the jungle again, because it's just been the same champions every game. Kha'Zix, Kayn, and Hecarim practically every game. But yeah, hopefully a bit of change will be nice. And then support stuff. Again, the support changes, it still has weirded me out. You know, I keep bringing it up, but supports have been fine. AD carries have been fine. Even assassins have been fine. Top lane hasn't been fine. Mid lane mages haven't been fine. And those are the two things that they've ignored the most. It's just very weird. But anyway, so support, their general strategy of changing was lower completed item gold cost, so support can build more items in an average game. Look for opportunities to position some items as support options, so other items that normally a support couldn't afford. Create a late game gold sync capstone item for those games where you get really ahead and have a full inventory, so that is the wardstone, which obviously has been bugged this patch and they had to disable it. Smooth out the build paths to complete items by adding new components. That's been good. Put more power into passives where we can, so they're more noticeable and fulfilling their need, which is good. And find an opportunity in the system for a big satisfaction win. So I do obviously play support a little bit. Have I noticed astronomical changes? No, not really. And that's, I think, part of the problem is, hilariously, because supports don't get as much items, your actual champion is the biggest piece of the puzzle. Your actual champion has the most strength, where a lot of the time, obviously, for other roles, it's not that. Like, the moment a Hecarim buys Yumu's, oh geez, I'm dead, or a Kayn buys Yumu's, or an AD carry gets Rageblade, the item is more important than the champion in a lot of cases. But support, it actually feels not as bad. And that's what I actually think is quite refreshing is, you know, Soraka hitting level 6 is more important than her first item, or anything like that. Nautilus hitting level 6 is more important because that's what makes that be able to make the play. Or Rakan hitting level 6, it's not the item, it's the champion. And that's kind of what I miss from the other roles, is it should be more about the champion, where it's not. It's more about, oh, you got your item spike. So I actually think Riot could learn from support. It's more satisfying in some ways because your champion means more, but that's just me. But yeah, I'm not going to read through all the support changes, but just say longer term, we will keep an eye on these changes to see if satisfaction has gone up and will adjust as necessary. We also know that there are other parts of support ecosystem, like some of the support tank items that we didn't get to address this time around for increasing satisfaction, but we will hope to get there at some point. And then early game changes. So yeah, as League has evolved, laning phase has become more and more about finding an advantage in order to roam to the other lanes rather than kill your direct lane opponent. That right there literally has just summarized part of my big frustration with League in modern day. You know, you guys have been watching my videos, you've been hearing me. When I play mid, I am playing mid. I want to beat my lane opponent. And that's what's been so frustrating for me, is half the time my lane opponent isn't even in mid. They're in bot. And it's like, well, this is just, it's not. And the word literally is the keyword that even Riot is talking about. It is satisfaction. It's about having fun in the video game. And it's just not fun to not really have a mid lane opponent. They're just so focused on roaming. It's just not satisfying. So I don't know. And again, I don't even know if roaming is a satisfying playstyle for most people that even roam. Again, they're doing it for a reason. It's a strong playstyle right now, and you don't really get punished for doing it. But it's weird. Again, you really don't remember, everybody. You don't get punished as much in mid lane for roaming because they actually made minions worth less gold. So if you roam in mid lane, you're not actually losing as much gold because the minions themselves are worth less. If you go bot lane and get a double kill, you're making more money doing that than you would be staying mid and doing a few waves. If anything, they should increase the goals from minions. So if you roam and it doesn't go well, you are being massively punished to the laner that stays in mid and farms. Maybe that's the way they should do it. I don't know. But anyway, while one of the high points in skill differ the enemy laner. Wait, let me read that again. While one of the high points is skill diffing the enemy laner, it's become more and more common that the best play is to go influence another lane. Yeah, well, the best play. You just don't get punished for doing it. Similarly, the windows of having a fair and honorable 1v1 are few and far between, with ganks and roams interrupting the lane phase extremely frequently. Yeah, this is literally speaking my language. Oh, what's going on here? So our goal for mid-season, well, I don't know if they've achieved this for mid-season, I'll be honest. But anyway, our goal for mid-season was to emphasize the laning phase, which meant increase the amount of times you can 1v1 or 2v2 your lane opponent, reduce the very early influence of other lanes and ganks on your lane success, and support smaller early losses so that one lost trade doesn't end the laning phase. Okay. Oh, okay. So it's the upcoming patch, is it? In the upcoming patch, it will be harder to take multiple tower plates in a single push, especially when ganked. Good. You'll be able to use one ward to cover more gank paths. Ooh. And you'll be a bit more resilient to tower dives. These are all good things. Wow, okay. The largest change of the patch will be syncing. Oh, I've heard about this. Yes. The largest change of the patch will be syncing when minion waves meet the lanes. Previously, mid lane minions would meet well before the side, because again, they all spawn at the same time. Mid lane is the shortest lane, so they meet first. And obviously, bot and top are curved, so it takes them longer to get to the middle. So obviously, what happened a lot of the time for really early, just roaming champions like Katarina or Kiana, they do the first couple waves, but because you're a bit ahead, because the waves met first, they then could roam really quick. But if they all meet at the same time, it delays that, and it might even get rid of that early roam. So this desync each lane would have the time to quickly clear their wave and leave vision to look for a gank. If the enemy laner extended themselves to farm the wave or was weak to a dive, the player would complete the roam. If not, then they could return to the lane and miss almost no experience or gold, which is true. Syncing the waves increases the opportunity cost of roaming and should give attentive laners a bit more leeway when risking themselves to push or farm a wave. That's really good. Okay, I like that. That actually might bring me back to mid. Been playing a lot of jungle recently. Long term, we'll monitor how these changes affect all levels of play and adjust accordingly. We don't want to remove roaming and play making, as it's an integral part of League. Of why it's fun and why there's a risk to pick a weaker scaling champions. We hope these changes even out the balance between laning and roaming so that there's more outplay moments and a bit less jungle mid support roaming diff. Because that's all League has become in the last year. And that's it. What I would say is this is really good for people that actually like to lane, especially mid. And I'm someone that likes to lane mid. You know, there's kind of two different camps of mid laners nowadays. You've got the actual laners and you've got the roamers. I'm fine with roaming, as I always have said. I'm fine with roaming. My problem with roaming, it's much like split pushing. Split pushing was a niche strategy that only you do on certain champions at certain times, at certain moments. It's become a default. It's the exact same with roaming. Roaming has become not... You know, to me, the standard way of playing should be staying mid, farming, blah, 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 blah. For a lot of players, roaming has become the default. You know, I would even say it's close to even 50-50 of 50% of laners stay in lane, 50% of laners look to roam a lot. That shouldn't be the percentage. Like, it just shouldn't. Roaming should be specific on things. Yes, opportunities should always roam, even if you're playing a non-roaming champion. If the opportunity presents itself, roam, but it shouldn't be a default. And that's what it's become on so many champs. And so many players have just become that way. So potentially this would actually make for a really good change. So I'm actually quite excited about the new patch now, if that is definitely part of it. That helps a lot to just mages, because like Riot said here, is they would, you know, your lane opponent would literally do the first or second wave. If you're playing a scaling mage, you don't have any lane priority. Your wave clear a lot of the time sucks too in the early game. So if you're against something like a Katarina or a Kiana, they could out clear you quicker. Their lane your lane meets first, so they clear the wave before you can. Then they roam. They even could go help their enemy jungler. They could go kill your jungler. I've seen it all. And you're just sitting there basically sucking your thumb in mid lane going, I can't help. I'm a mage. I'm sorry. So this will help to that a bit. So that's good. But overall, I will say overall, the mid-season update, it hasn't felt great. I'm playing a lot of jungle now because it's just mid lane has been kind of pointless for a while. But I don't want... Oh, my light just changed. I don't want to play jungle. I want to play mid. Hopefully it'll bring me back this a bit. Roaming is still going to be strong. They're not actively doing massively anything to stop it. And mages, as even Brighter said, they need them to get buffed like fighters. But the problem is, it isn't happening anytime soon. By the sounds of this, it's going to be happening in pre-season, which is at the end of this actual ranked season in December, January, and I am worried that Riot is even thinking the problem is in the wrong place. If they think it's genuinely because it's a gankable lane, yes, technically mid is very gankable. Yes, technically, even when I'm playing mid, I get the enemy jungler coming mid a lot. But that isn't the actual main problem. It's the problem that mages are weaker in the 1v1 early than a lot of champions, and then they can't roam. So that kind of just completely goes on top of a mage, and before you know it, the game is snowballed and you just can't do anything because you're still scaling. You're still weaker than your lane opponent, who's roamed a lot, and they've gained strength from roaming. And because mid lane especially, the minions are worth less gold than any other lane now, you're not even making as much gold from staying mid and farming. It's just a lose-lose situation for a lot of mages. That's the problem. But anyway, that's going to be it. Let me know what you think. That was quite an interesting update. I don't agree, obviously, with what everything Riot does, and I don't think Riot are expecting players to, although they probably would want them to. But hopefully this upcoming patch will be good. I might upload this as today's second video. The patch, by the way, has been delayed one day because I think of the weekend America had a holiday. So I'll upload this, and you can kind of get the gist of what Riot think of just happened. And then tomorrow, the second video will be the actual patch update. So if you guys enjoy, do throw a like on it, throw a comment, throw a subscribe, and let me know obviously what you think about the patch and all the changes. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Crawl down!